I've asked to be assigned to your security detail. I just wanted you to know about it.
Oh, Lieutenant, I'd hate to take you away from your other duties, I'm sure.
You knew him by the raincoat, the cigar, and that one last question that was never really the last one. But behind one of the most beloved detective shows ever made, there are dozens of small things most people never noticed. And today, we're going through 25 small details you missed in Columbo, 1968.
I must say it looks better on you than it ever did on her. Susan, now Susan.
Detail number 25. 2 other actors played Columbo before Peter Falk. Most people think of Columbo and see Peter Falk. The squint, the trench coat, the shuffling walk. But 2 other actors played the character before Falk ever put on that raincoat. In 1960, Bert Freed played Lieutenant Columbo in an episode of the Chevy mystery show called Enough Rope, a live television broadcast that was essentially the first rough sketch of everything the show would eventually become. 2 years later, in 1962, Thomas Mitchell played the detective in a stage version of Prescription. Murder on Broadway. When the stage play was adapted into a television film in 1968, the role finally found Falk, and the character became something else entirely. But for 8 years before that, Columbo belonged to 2 other men.
No, not a thing. But of course, we might be able to run him down when he tries to sell the stuff he stole. We can't be sure.
Detail number 24. Bing Crosby turned down the role. When the writers were developing the character for the 1968 television film, they had someone in mind for the part of Columbo that was not Peter Falk. Bing Crosby was the original choice. He turned it down. The reason Crosby gave was that the schedule would take too much time away from golf. Lee J. Cobb was also suggested, but he was unavailable. Director Richard Irving then pushed for Falk, who was younger than the writers had pictured the character, but whose audition changed everything about how Columbo would be played. Falk said later that he would have killed to get that role. He got it. Crosby kept his tea times, and the history of television quietly shifted.
Bother me, Look, don't ever try to get last week's weather at 11 o'clock at night. It's no fun.
Detail number 23. The character was based on a Russian novel written over a century earlier. Richard Levinson and William Link, the men who created Columbo, were both students of literature, and the character they built had a very specific literary ancestor. They have said directly that Columbo was based on Porfiry Petrovich, the persistent, apparently disorganized police investigator from Fyodor Dostoevsky's 1866 novel, Crime and Punishment. Porfiry uses the same technique. He approaches the murderer with apparent confusion, rambles, asks seemingly irrelevant questions, then circles back with the one thing that tightens the trap. The creators also cited G.K. Chesterton's humble detective Father Brown and the shabby Inspector Fichet from the 1955 French film Les Diaboliques as influences. Columbo, in other words, had literary roots running back more than 100 years before he ever appeared on a television screen.
I know it, and you know it.
No,
too.
I don't know
yes,
it.
You do
No,
know
I
it.
don't
yes,
know
you
it.
do.
Detail number 22. The famous catchphrase was born out of laziness. Just one more thing is one of the most recognized phrases in the history of American television. It was an accident. Levinson and Link were writing a scene for the original stage play in which Columbo had already exited the room, but the scene felt too short. They had already moved past the point where they'd need to retype the page. And on a manual typewriter, retyping a whole page was a real inconvenience. So instead of restructuring the scene, they simply had Columbo come back through the door and say, "Oh, just one more thing." It was a shortcut, a fix for a short scene, a line they intended to improve later. They never did. Levinson later acknowledged it plainly. We were too lazy to retype the scene.
Well, I dropped by to tell you that they found the car.
We already have that information.
I can see that.
Detail number 21. The entire wardrobe belonged to Peter Falk. Everything Columbo wore on screen was Peter Falk's own clothing. The worn-out brown suit, the high-topped shoes, the disheveled look, all of it came from Falk's personal wardrobe. The raincoat has its own origin story. In 1967, Falk was caught in a rainstorm in New York City, ducked into a shop, and bought the first coat he could find for $15. It was tan, well-worn looking even when new, and he held onto it. When he eventually played Columbo in the 1968 television film Prescription, Murder, he wore it on screen. That same $15 raincoat became the most recognized garment in television history. Falk later put down a persistent rumor that the coat had been donated to the Smithsonian Institution. He said it was still in his upstairs closet.
Okay, I guess that was the reason then. I want to ask you about this snapshot.
Detail number 20. Falk added the cigar entirely on his own. Peter Falk was a lifelong cigarette smoker. When he took on the role of Columbo, he decided the character needed something in his hands, something to fidget with, something that would give him a reason to look down or pause at the right moment. The cigar was his own addition, entirely unscripted and not part of the original concept. It became one of the most immediately recognizable things about the character. The cigars Columbo smokes on screen are consistently cheap ones, short, chewed up, lit without ceremony. When a suspect or host in an episode offered him a quality Cuban, the character would happily accept. Falk reportedly never turned down a good cigar.
What mistakes?
Well, obviously you misjudged this man when you first met him, for one.
Oh, that one? Oh.
Detail number 19. Falk's trademark squint came from losing an eye at age 3. Peter Falk had his right eye surgically removed when he was 3 years old after being diagnosed with retinoblastoma, a rare form of cancer that attacks the retina. He wore a glass eye for the rest of his life. The distinctive squint that became so associated with Columbo, that slightly unfocused look that seemed to suggest the detective was always examining something invisible just past your shoulder, was a direct result of the prosthetic. He used it instinctively as a performer, turning a physical reality into a character trait. When he needed to find his mark on a film set, the taped spot on the floor where an actor is supposed to stand for correct lighting, Falk couldn't locate it with his sightless right eye, so he developed the habit of looking down and appearing to scratch his forehead. That reflective, pensive gesture became one of Columbo's most recognizable mannerisms. The character was shaped in small and large ways by what Falk had lived through.
And he picked up a few things! Is that right, friend?
Detail number 18. The show invented a whole new kind of mystery story. Before Columbo, mystery shows followed the same basic structure. The crime happens off-screen or partially hidden. Clues accumulate, and at the end, the detective reveals the killer to a surprised audience. Columbo did the opposite. From the very beginning of every episode, the audience sees exactly who committed the murder and exactly how it was done. The entire point of the show is watching Columbo figure out what the audience already knows. This format has a technical name, the inverted mystery, or how catch 'em. And it was almost unheard of in American television before Columbo popularized it. The tension came not from wondering who did it, but from watching a seemingly bumbling detective methodically dismantle the plans of someone who was certain they had outsmarted everyone.
I just had to come outside and get a breath.
Oh, I think I better get back.
Now, look, wait a minute. Let me tell you something.
Detail number 17. Peter Falk refused to do the show weekly. and that's why each episode is so good. The original plan at NBC was to air a new episode of Columbo every week, which would have meant shooting an episode every 5 days. Peter Falk refused. He was a film actor with a substantial career in motion pictures, and he had no interest in the grinding pace of weekly television. The network ultimately agreed to air episodes once a month as part of a rotating umbrella series called the NBC Mystery Movie, alongside McMillan and Wife and McLeod. That arrangement gave each Columbo episode roughly the production time of a small feature film. Writers, directors, and guest stars could be chosen more carefully. The extra time is audible and visible in every frame of those early seasons. The show's unusual quality was, in large part, a consequence of Falk digging in and refusing to be rushed.
But the lady detective, what a character, what a brain, and what logic, the way she figures it out.
Detail number 16. The very first episode was directed by a 24-year-old Steven Spielberg. When the series premiere of Columbo aired in 1971, it was called Murder by the Book, written by Stephen Bacco and directed by a young filmmaker named Steven Spielberg. Spielberg was 24 years old. He had directed a few television episodes before this, but was not yet anyone's idea of a name to watch. Falk recalled the experience years later. He noticed that Spielberg was shooting scenes with a long lens from across the street, an unusual, almost cinematic technique for a television production at the time, and told the producers that this young director was too good for Columbo. 3 years later, Spielberg directed Jaws. The episode he made for Columbo was eventually ranked number 16 on TV Guide's list of the 100 greatest television episodes of all time.
Yes. Can I help you?
Lieutenant Columbo, ma'am, police. I'd like to speak to Mr. Hayward.
Oh, no need for concern.
Detail number 15. Falk's improvisation was deliberate and strategic. Much of what audiences experienced as Columbo's scattered, bumbling behavior was Peter Falk improvising in real time, but with a purpose. Falk would ad-lib moments on set, searching through his pockets and pulling out a grocery list instead of what he was looking for, asking a character to borrow a pencil, getting distracted mid-sentence by something across the room, rambling about his wife's cooking at a dramatically tense moment. He did this intentionally to keep the other actors off balance. He wanted his fellow performers' confused, impatient, sometimes contemptuous reactions to Columbo to be completely genuine, not acted. The genuine irritation of an actor dealing with an unexpected improvisation, photographed exactly like the genuine irritation of a murderer dealing with a detective who won't go away.
Vean nada más, y no lo tengo asegurado. Y tenemos un herido gravísimo allá adentro, un herido gravísimo.
Detail number 14. Columbo's car was chosen because it was perfect for the character. Columbo drives a 1960 Peugeot 403 convertible, a French car that was already old and unreliable when the show was set and looked even worse than it ran. The choice of vehicle was not accidental. The car was a piece of character work, an extension of the detective's carefully constructed appearance of ordinariness. When Columbo pulled up to a suspect's mansion or parked in a gleaming corporate garage, the Peugeot announced before he'd even stepped out that here was a man of no apparent consequence. The license plate during the NBC years was 044-APD. When the show moved to ABC in 1989, the plate changed to 448-DBZ. The car appeared in almost every episode across 3 decades and became almost as recognizable as the raincoat.
My wife doesn't like music. She watches murder mysteries, so whenever the concert's on, I work late.
Right. There's not going to be any...
Detail number 13. The dog was added because NBC wanted Columbo to have a sidekick. When Columbo was renewed for a second season, the network pushed for the detective to have a human partner, a sidekick in the traditional television sense. The show's creators, Levinson and Link, worked with writer Stephen Bacco to find an alternative that would satisfy NBC without changing the character. Their solution was a dog. The dog had to be right. When a Basset Hound pulled from a pound was brought to the set, slow-moving, floppy-eared, completely indifferent, Falk recognized the fit immediately. He called the animal Dog, which became the character's actual name on screen. Falk's initial instinct had been that Columbo already had enough quirks between the raincoat, the cigar, and the car. But the dog worked, and the pairing became part of the show's identity for the rest of its run.
Just think, 30 whole years.
Ma'am, excuse me. This is just for the family, ma'am.
Detail number 12. Patrick McGoohan played a Columbo killer more times than anyone else. Several actors played Columbo murderers more than once across the show's 35-year run. Patrick McGoohan, the Irish-American actor best known for The Prisoner, appeared as a different killer 4 separate times, more than any other performer. McGoohan also directed 5 episodes of the series. He won Emmy Awards for 2 of his appearances, in 1975 and 1990. Jack Cassidy appeared 3 times as a different murderer, and Robert Culp matched that with 3 appearances of his own. William Shatner played a killer twice. The show had a tradition of casting celebrated actors in the villain's role, and the best of them came back more than once. McGoohan and Falk were close friends in real life, and Falk once said of him that he was the most underrated, underappreciated talent he had ever worked with.
Oh, that's all right. You're just doing your job. Listen, I'll get those things fixed.
This license expires next week.
Detail number 11. Columbo's first name was never spoken on screen, but it's there if you look. Through all 69 episodes, no one ever addresses Lieutenant Columbo by his first name in dialogue. In one episode, when someone asks what his first name is, the answer he gives is simply Lieutenant. The name was intentionally kept out of the scripts by the creators, who felt it made the character more mysterious. However, in the 1971 episode Dead Weight, Columbo briefly flashes his badge on camera. For decades, viewers watching on standard television couldn't read it. With freeze-frame technology, the name on the badge becomes visible, Frank. The character had a first name all along, quietly sitting inside a prop that passed by in a fraction of a second. Detail number 10. This old man was Falk improvising and became a signature. In a 1973 episode called Any Old Port in a Storm, Columbo was waiting for someone to answer a phone. Peter Falk, filling the silence as he often did, began humming a children's song he enjoyed. This old man, sometimes known as Knick Knack Paddywhack. The writers and directors noticed it and kept it. From that point on, Columbo humming or whistling. This old man became a recurring feature of the series, often appearing in the score and associated with the moment the detective had quietly figured out the solution. Like so many things about the character, it arrived unplanned.
Sure is, isn't he?
Do you recognize him?
Detail number 9. Mrs. Columbo was never seen on screen, and that was entirely intentional. Throughout the entire run of the series, Columbo constantly refers to his wife. He mentions her cooking, her opinions, her relatives, her various enthusiasms. She is a presence in almost every episode. She never appears on screen. The creators made that choice deliberately from the beginning, and they held to it through all 69 episodes and across 35 years. The unseen Mrs. Columbo became part of the show's texture. The domestic life of a man who seems to have no glamour, no status, and nothing the killers he pursues could ever feel threatened by. In 1979, NBC launched a spin-off series called Mrs. Columbo. The show's creators disputed that this character had any connection to the lieutenant's wife, and the series is generally treated as entirely separate from the original. Detail number 8, Falk's salary went from $300,000 to $600,000 per episode in 13 years. Peter Falk had leveraged his way into a remarkable financial arrangement with Universal. When he returned for season 6 of the NBC run in 1976, he was reportedly earning $300,000 per episode, an enormous figure for American television at that time. When the show was revived on ABC in 1989 after an 11-year hiatus, that number had doubled to $600,000 per episode. The show ran on ABC through 2003, with Falk continuing to appear in every installment. He was, for much of the 1970s and 1980s, the highest-paid actor in American television, a position made possible by the show's unusual format. The limited number of episodes per season meant the network couldn't wear him down or replace him.
Came here for help. Listen to me. I was there the other night. I heard what you said. I heard you say to Mr. Benjamin, that woman.
Detail number 7, Johnny Cash, was in a Columbo episode, and Falk helped him through it. Johnny Cash appeared in a 1974 episode called Swan Song, playing a gospel singer who becomes a murderer. Cash was not an actor by training and went into the production genuinely uncertain about whether he could handle a dramatic role. He wrote about the experience in his autobiography, recounting that Falk recognized his nervousness and quietly helped him through the shoot, offering guidance in small, practical ways every day on set. Cash's performance held together in no small part because Falk made it his business to be generous to a man who was out of his element. The episode is one of the most remembered in the entire series.
Oh yeah, we pulled a serial number and sent it through the computer. It's registered to a Mr. Victor.
Detail number 6. The show became so popular in Romania that it nearly caused a political crisis. Columbo was broadcast in more than 40 countries during its original run, and its reception in Romania was unlike anything that happened anywhere else. The show had become enormously popular there by the early 1970s. When the 1974 season ended and Romanian television ran out of episodes to air, the public became convinced that the government, then operating under the communist Ceausescu regime, was secretly hoarding more episodes and refusing to broadcast them. Protests erupted. The U.S. State Department became involved. A meeting was arranged in a New York hotel room between Falk and a Romanian diplomatic representative. Falk, by his own account, asked what he was supposed to do about the Romanian government. He was told that Columbo was Romania's Elvis Presley and was persuaded to record a short speech, written out phonetically for him in Romanian, to be broadcast there, assuring the public that no episodes were being withheld and that new ones were coming. It worked.
I have to tell you the truth. The department took me off the case. There's just nothing concrete.
Detail number 5. Falk's peculiar forehead gesture had a completely practical origin. One of the things viewers noticed most about Columbo was the habit of touching or rubbing his forehead over his left eye while appearing to think. It looked like a gesture of concentration, a detective lost in thought at a crucial moment. In reality, it was a workaround. When actors are positioned on a set, their marks, the specific spots where they need to stand for the lighting and camera angles to work, are indicated by tape on the floor. Peter Falk, with a sightless right eye, couldn't locate those marks by looking down without also blocking the camera's view of his left eye. He learned to cover his good eye slightly with his hand, look down to find the tape, and let it read on camera as that pensive, concentrated expression. One of the character's defining visual moments came from a man navigating around a practical limitation.
Absolutely warrants it.
Whatever it is, sir, I won't breathe a word.
Detail number 4. Before playing a detective, Falk applied to the CIA and was turned down. Peter Falk came to acting late and by an unusual path. After earning a master's degree in public administration from Syracuse University in 1953, he went to work as a management efficiency expert for the Budget Bureau of the state of Connecticut, a government job analyzing how departments spent money and whether they could do it better. Before that, he had applied to join the CIA. He was rejected. Having been turned away from the armed services during World War II because of his prosthetic eye, and then turned away from the CIA, Falk eventually walked away from government work altogether and moved to New York to pursue acting at the age of 28. He studied under Eva Le Gallienne and Sanford Meisner, earned his first Oscar nomination in 1960, and within 8 years was playing one of the most celebrated fictional investigators in the history of American television. The man who made a career of catching criminals had first tried to join the government agency dedicated to catching them for real, and couldn't get in the door.
Well, now that you have.
You're right. You can't climb up that tree onto the balcony, but you sure as hell can climb down.
Detail number 3, Columbo almost never carried a gun. For nearly the entire run of the show, Lieutenant Columbo did not carry a firearm on screen. He went from scene to scene, confronting wealthy and often dangerous killers, entirely unarmed and apparently untroubled by the fact. The show allowed the absence of a gun to become part of its character, a detective who relied entirely on observation and conversation to close every case. In one episode, Forgotten Lady, Columbo is shown having a colleague take his firearms qualification test for him because he does not want to pass it himself. The character fires a weapon in only one other episode, Playback, and only to conduct an experiment, not in any confrontational context. In a genre built around tension between armed individuals, Columbo made the absence of a gun one of its quiet signatures.
Of course, I don't have it, but Tony has a trust fund. Now, in an emergency like this...
Ah, the trust fund.
Detail number 2, Peter Falk's daughter is a real-life private detective. Peter Falk's daughter, Catherine Falk, works as a private investigator. Her father spent more than 3 decades playing perhaps the most famous fictional detective in American television history, and Catherine Falk built a career in the actual profession. She has been involved in advocacy work around elder care and guardianship issues, work that took on particular personal weight as her father developed dementia in his later years. Falk was diagnosed with the condition in late 2007. By 2009, according to testimony at a guardianship trial, his condition had deteriorated to the point where he could no longer recall having played a character named Columbo or identify a photograph of the detective. He died on June 23, 2011, at the age of 83.
Call this the spine of the book, and you can break that thing by putting it down upside down like that.
Detail number 1. A bronze statue of Columbo and his dog stands on a street named after a possible Falk relative in Budapest. In 2014, a life-sized bronze sculpture of Lieutenant Columbo and his Basset Hound was unveiled in Budapest, Hungary, on a street called Mixa Falk Street. The street is named after a 19th-century Hungarian writer and politician named Mixa Falk, who lived from 1828 to 1908. According to local historians, Peter Falk may have been a distant relative of Mixa Falk, though that connection has never been definitively proven. The statue was placed on that particular street for that reason, as a gesture linking the fictional character to a city that may have a familial claim on the actor who played him. Whether or not the family connection is real, the statue stands there still. A rumpled detective with a cigar and a slow-moving dog, permanently parked on a Budapest street, looking like he just has one more question to ask. 35 years, 69 episodes, and one of the most carefully built characters in television history, Columbo earned its place in living rooms around the world, one question at a time. If you enjoyed going through all of this, please hit that like button and subscribe. There are plenty more of these waiting for you. We'll see you in the next one.